und diese Tatsachen ignorieren. Und deshalb begrüße ich nochmal die gestrige Entscheidung des Rechtsausschusses. Die jüngsten Beiträge von Zoltán Kovács, er ist offizieller Regierungssprecher der Regierung Orbán, in den sozialen Medien, wo er in Reaktion auf Ilarias Social-Media-Aktivitäten einen Post getweetet hat, wo die Koordinaten des ungarischen oder des Budapester Gefängnisses abgebildet waren, machen doch eindeutig, dass es hier eine politische Beeinflussung von höchster Ebene in diesem Verfahren gibt. Und auch Viktor Orbán selbst, der Ministerpräsident Ungarns, hat sich in diese Debatte politisch eingeschaltet. Hier herrscht politische Willkür und eine politische Instrumentalisierung. Und deshalb fordere ich alle Kolleginnen und Kollegen des Europäischen Parlaments auf, alle Anträge, und ich wiederhole nochmal alle Anträge Ungarns auf Aufhebung der Immunität von Parlamentariern abzulehnen. Solange die Rechtsstaatlichkeit in Ungarn nicht gewährleistet ist, müssen gewählte Vertreterinnen und Vertreter, aber auch Aktivistinnen und Aktivisten vor dieser Willkürjustiz geschützt werden, bis die politisch motivierte Verfolgung in Ungarn eingestellt worden ist. Es darf keine Auslieferung nach Ungarn geben. Und wir, die Linksfraktion im Europäischen Parlament, sind jetzt sehr hoffnungsfroh, sehr optimistisch gestimmt und davon überzeugt, dass das Parlament im Oktober der Empfehlung und Entscheidung seines Rechtsausschusses in der Plenarsitzung folgen wird, diese bestätigen wird und damit die zentrale Bedeutung von Rechtsstaatlichkeit und demokratischen Grundwerten bekräftigen wird. Ich freue mich, wie gesagt, sehr über Ihre Anwesenheit. Ich freue mich noch viel mehr über die gestrige Entscheidung. Vielen Dank.
Vielen Dank, Martin. Thank you very much. And now we'll go to finish off the presentations before questions. We'll go to former judge of the International Criminal Court, Kuno Tafrosa. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. And let me say at the outset that I'm not a politician. I do not share any political idea of whatever. And I'm not here also to comment on the request to the waiver of the immunity of the Member of Parliament, Ilaria SALIS, whom, by the way, I met for the first time at 4 minutes to 10 today. So, because I was looking at the clock. So 4 minutes to 10, I met her the first time. Nor I'm here to pass judgment in any way on the actions of which she is accused by the Hungarian authorities, let alone to justify them. I do not justify violence, whatever, if it was committed, I don't know. But, okay. I was asked to intervene here as a lawyer who in late 2023, it was November 2023, and Ilaria SALIS was a nobody at that time, also in Italy. In late 2023, as Deputy Prosecutor General of Milan at that time, I had to deal with a case which is perfectly overlapping to the case of Ilaria SALIS and others, especially in Germany. The case I'm referring to concerned an Italian citizen who was arrested in Italy in execution of a European arrest warrant issued by the Hungarian judicial authorities for the same conducts for which also Ilaria SALIS is accused of. From the very, very first moment when I read the arrest warrant, the European arrest warrant, and although being a prosecutor, I submitted to the Court of Appeal a very firm request not, and I repeat, not to surrender the young man to the Hungarian authorities. And I motivated my request on the basis of basically of two arguments, which immediately seemed decisive to me. The first argument, and they're still decisive to me, the first argument was the disproportionality between the offences charged, which appeared me from the European arrest warrant, on the one side, and the punishment threatened on the other. The proportionality between conduct and punishment is a basic principle of criminal law. In Italy, probably the conduct charged to the guy I'm speaking about him would amount to nearly nothing. The second argument I proposed to the Court of Appeal in asking not to surrender the person to the Hungarian authorities was the political, the legal, and the social development of Hungary from an EU member state once sharing common values regarding the protection of internationally recognized human rights and the independence of the judiciary, to a so-called illiberal democracy in which these common values have been and are being increasingly dismantled. The mutual trust, which is the basis of our common values, but especially regarding the judiciary, the mutual trust has come less, and that's why I asked not to surrender the person to the Hungarian authorities. These two arguments, as well as the failure of the Hungarian authorities to fully and satisfactorily answer the court's specific inquiries about the conditions of detention and fair trial guarantees, led the Milan Court of Appeal to adhere to my request and thus to decide, after very thorough and detailed information review, to refuse to surrender the person concerned. But there was another decision coming later, at the beginning of this year, on 9 April this year. Also the Paris Court of Appeal, the Parisian Court of Appeal, refused to surrender another person who had been arrested in France on the basis of a Hungarian European arrest warrant for alleged crimes committed in the same context as the guy in Milan and as Ilaria SALIS. The Parisian court recognized that in the event of a surrender, there is a risk that the rights guaranteed by Article 3 and 6 of the European Convention on Human Rights and Article 4, 47 and 48 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union will be violated. In other words, the court stated that there is a clear risk of an unfair trial, a trial conducted by a judiciary that is neither independent nor impartial, and the risk of the person, if surrendered, being subjected to inhuman and degrading treatment in detention. It is significant that both decisions, Milan and Paris, explicitly refer to several resolutions of various EU institutions, including the European Parliament, recognizing and condemning the constant undermining of the independence of the judiciary by Hungary, which decision makers should therefore be aware of and take into account, regardless of their political credo. Against the background of these undisputed and unquestionable facts and circumstances, it would be incomprehensible, at least to me, if the Parliament itself were to come to a decision that would clearly put a member of its institution at risk of being surrendered to Hungary, a member state that is widely and rightly labeled as an illiberal democracy, and where two member states' courts of appeal have already found that a fair and expeditious trial is not guaranteed, and that inhuman and degrading treatment is taking place. It should be clear that what is at stake in this parliamentary procedure is not the political position of the person concerned, nor the allegations against her, however serious they might be. At stake are higher principles and values such as the protection of fundamental human rights, towards which we are still and fortunately oriented, and human dignity, which must be recognized and guaranteed for all persons. At stake, if I may, and with all due respect, is also the very credibility of the institution. And I'm referring explicitly to the European Parliament regarding the consistency of its own decisions vis-à-vis the Hungarian political institutional involution from a state of law to, and I repeat, an illiberal democracy. In this regard, I cannot but mention and recall the dramatic detention conditions of Maya T. is facing in a Hungarian jail after having been handed over to Hungary by German authorities following, to say at least, a very borderline procedure. Furthermore, the fumus persecutionis against Ilaria SALIS is clearly evident from recent statements by senior Hungarian politicians, as was stated just before. Let me conclude by saying that Article 8 and 9, he could choose, of the Italian Criminal Code provides for the possibility for an Italian citizen to be tried in Italy at the request of the Minister of Justice in the event of a political crime committed abroad or another crime which is sanctioned with a certain grade of imprisonment. The question is, why doesn't the minister activate this possibility? So, what is at stake is not Ilaria SALIS' destiny, nor her criminal responsibility, or even her political ideas, I do not agree with. What is at stake is the credibility of Europe, its institutions, and its fundamental values. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your intervention. And now it's time for the questions. So, when you ask, please state your name and the organization that you represent. So, questions. We can start here, and then move up to the front. So, 1, 2, 3, please.
Okay. Sì, buongiorno, Leonardo Panetta di Mediaset. In riferimento a la richiesta di poter essere processata in Italia, lei negli scorsi giorni ha fatto anche un appello alla politica. Vuole rinnovare questo appello? Penso anche e chi in questo momento governa l'Italia, ad esempio Giorgia Meloni, so che ha anche parlato del ministro Nordio. Grazie.
How about we'll take this question and then the question up here too, and then we can go, please.
Thank you. Question in English. I'm Jennifer Rankin from The Guardian. For those of us who have not followed your case from the very beginning, could you respond directly to the charges leveled by the Hungarian government of assault, of membership of an extreme left organization? I understand you've said they are dubious and you reject them, but could you recount what happened at that demonstration in Budapest that you took part in, and to give your account of it, please? And secondly, the Hungarian government described you, Ms. Salis, as a member of Antifa. Is that a designation that you accept? And what do you think, also to your colleague as well, what do you think of the designation, of the attempt to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization, proposed by Viktor Orbán following the example of Donald Trump? What does this movement, which is also now has some support from the far right in the European Parliament, but what do you think of that attempt to designate it as a terrorist organization?
Thank you very much. I think that's very clear. And now the final question from here.
Thank you. It's really connected to her question. In February 2023, what was the reason you traveled to Budapest? Why were you in Budapest in that time? And also, if you can recognize this person, I show you from a closer distance, this one, because he was beaten up by your comrades and possibly you in Budapest. Do you have any connection to this person? Can you recognize this person? I show everybody, because it happened in Budapest. And
I don't know that it's necessary for the question. Thank you.
Va bene, rispondo subito al signore perché sono anche veramente stufa di ricevere accuse e diffamazioni. Neanche la magistratura ungherese mi ha mai accusato di aver picchiato quella persona. Io ho già detto e ribadisco la mia innocenza e questo è il motivo per cui io chiedo di essere processata in un paese dove sia rispettato le norme dello Stato di diritto, dove abbia la possibilità di avere un processo equo, e questo spetterebbe appunto alle autorità italiane aprire un procedimento a mio carico e mettere fine a questo processo farsa che si sta tenendo in Ungheria. Grazie.
Martin.
Ja, vielen Dank. Ihre Frage betreffend vom Guardian bezüglich des Versuches der ungarischen Regierung, Donald Trump zu folgen und antifaschistisches Engagement als terroristisch zu beschreiben und auch einzustufen. Also wenn wir uns ehrlich machen hier in diesem Raum, dann hoffe ich doch, dass wir alle Antifaschistinnen und Antifaschisten sind. Und dieser Versuch, antifaschistisches Engagement zu kriminalisieren, als terroristisch zu beschreiben, das spielt natürlich genau weiter diese Leiter oder diese Leier vielmehr der extremen Rechten, um tatsächlich politische Gegner, politische Kritiker, aber auch den Rechtsstaat zu unterminieren, in ihrer Meinungsfreiheit einzuschränken. Und das zielt darauf ab, letztendlich einen fundamentalen Angriff auf die Demokratie auszuüben. Weil man muss nicht als Antifaschistin oder Antifaschist Sozialist sein wie ich, aber man muss als Demokrat, auch wenn man konservativ ist, natürlich Antifaschist sein. Das versteht sich von selbst. Und die Logik, gegen Antifaschistinnen und Antifaschisten vorzugehen, von Orbán, von Geert Wilders, von Donald Trump, zielt darauf ab, die Demokratie zu überwinden. Und deshalb muss dieser Angriff auf die Demokratie und auf antifaschistisches Engagement mit allem zurückgewiesen werden.
Thank you, Martin. Would you like to, before we go? No?
La prima domanda che ho fatto.
Pensavo di avere il mio discorso, le dichiarazioni che ho detto, come spiegava il giudice, sono anche stati e delle età tecniche per cui un cittadino può essere stato in Italia anche accuse relative a avvenuti in un paese. Io ripeto, in carcere a Budapest, poi l'ho detto durante l'intervento